Good evening and welcome to this Sunday, April 25th edition of the Island Stats Cricket Show. I'm your host, Earl Basin, and joining me are co-hosts Dean Miners and Andre Doc Manders, as well as our guests, Clay Smith and Jeff Richardson. Well, first of all, to the host, the co-host, good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Good evening, Earl. How's everything?
I'm good.
Good evening, Earl.
Yes. And to our guests, good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, no problem. Nice to be here, guys.
Good evening. Pleasure to be here.
Good. Well, first of all, let's get to Delray Rollins. Obviously, today was day 4 of his Sussex 4-day match against Yorkshire, where they lasted almost just over an hour this morning. They needed 99 runs with 4 wickets in hand going into the final day. Unfortunately, they were only able to score 50 runs. But the 4 wickets were claimed. I think, they faced 17.5 overs, going down by 48 runs in their game against Yorkshire. Now, Yorkshire have quite a few of former England and current England players, or just on the ranks of playing for England, as well as Sussex. But let's look at Delray's numbers in the first inning. Yorkshire were bowled out for 150, with Delray bowling 6 overs, 2 maidens, 2 for 12, and then Yorkshire bowled Sussex out for 221, and then Yorkshire would go on to, and Delray would only get 2 in that inning. Yorkshire would then go on and score 305, with Delray bowling 15 overs, 2 maidens, none for 40, and then of course Sussex were bowled out on the final day for 186. Dunn Bass finished with figures of 29.5 overs, 9 maidens, 6 for 53 in that second inning. We know that it always looks as if right now that Delray is struggling with the bat, but his bowling is rather steady. What would you think he would need to do, Dean, as far as the batting aspect?
Yeah, well, I mean, we spoke about it last week, and it's hard times at the beginning of the season in making the adjustments. So I would say to him, just continue on working hard, continue on working on technical, things that he needs to work on. But I wouldn't be as bothered. I wouldn't be too worried. Because it's early parts of the season. I wouldn't be as concerned or overly concerned.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Doc, as far as the batting side?
I'm like Dean. I won't be too concerned. It's preseason. I watched his first 2 innings in the warm-up games, and he looked really compact. So I wouldn't put too much, in the last in this game particularly, but he probably needs to go back in the nets and work on a few other things, but it's been looking pretty compact. I would just he needs to go back into the nets and work on a few things that, while he's getting out.
Right.
I saw a lot of he's been getting out LBW a lot, so maybe he needs to work on that in the nets, but I won't be too overly concerned.
Right. Now, our 2 guests, like you guys, can handle the bet. Jeff, but obviously batsmen go through slumps. Is a clear thing, and it's for everyone. You go through a period where the runs seem like they've come very difficult to get. What was one of the things if and when that happened to you, you would work on to kind of get that confidence back?
I'm probably the last person you should ask that. Just because the way I used to bat, right? I mean, you look at Clay and Doc, these are the type of guys that spend a lot of time at the wicket on most occasions. But I mean, I've always been true to my technique, to the way I played the game. I had to make some improvements as far as my defense was concerned. So if I could spend more time at the wicket, then I was able to get the big scores. Mm-hmm. I think Delray is just he's going through a little patch now. He's moving from the shorter version of the game, which he's done quite well. And I think that's his natural game. I think he's a really aggressive type batsman. So making the adjustment from the shorter version of the game to the longer version, it takes some time. My only concern is that he continues to get a run in the team. You know, sometimes people will look at, and well, it depends on whether carry him as a genuine all-rounder and his building can carry him and his bed is failing. But if they're looking for him to score runs, then the only concern would be whether he gets a decent run in the team.
What was your method, Kay? Because there were times where you would go through a slump where runs were hard to come by.
Yeah, well, for me, I was a little bit fortunate because I had Dean around me, I had my brother Randall around me, and we would always just hit tennis balls upon tennis balls. We would have a big, maybe 200 tennis balls, and we just hit them over and over and over and over. Just repetition, you know what I mean? Just building up your confidence, getting confidence in playing your shots. And that was pretty much what I did in terms of when I was struggling basically for runs. So I mean, if Delray is a little bit fortunate because he has a building machine, he just put the ball in and it shoots out for you. So he just needs to get back to the nets and put in the hard work. You know, it's early in the season. You know, it's really early. So I'll give him another week or two more weeks. He'll start turning good. Just sometimes it just takes that 1 inning to give you a confidence, and then he bounce back and go from there. You know.
Well, to the two coaches, obviously, I'm gonna let Dean and Doc get in on this, but we're to a point now where we know what our international commitments are. You guys handle a lot of domestic stuff and push guys towards the national teams, whether it be under 19s, under 15s, under the senior team. Looking at now, we're not unsure when a season will start, if it will in fact start, but what would you be telling the players in your camp to do the fact that right now we can't have training sessions collectively together? What are some of the things you, Jeff, would be telling the players to do to ensure that once you can start training, half of that battle or a quarter of that battle has been won already?
You know, it's really difficult, COVID being what it is, and the current situation that we're in is that, I mean, currently we can't even mix households. So, ordinarily a coach would say to guys, okay, you guys need to take the responsibility, work on your game, work on your fitness. Even if you go outside with a couple of tennis balls, put the old stuff, put a ball on a branch and just hit some balls. But to be honest, I just don't think these guys are that disciplined to be doing that. And COVID being what it is, if you have an opportunity to work, guys are going to be working. I don't know how many of them are currently unemployed as a result of COVID, how many are employed, what demands are being requested from them outside of cricket. It's still early days yet, and I'm concerned about what type of cricket we're going to have if we have any cricket at this current stage.
Doc, do you have any questions?
No, it's true what Jeff's saying. It's the main thing is what type of cricket they're going to start off. Most likely it'll be T20 and 50 overs, but it'd be interesting to see when it's going to start, right? And like Trey, what's going to be the protocols after when the season starts, before the season starts, because everybody likes to do preseason, but are they going to have 10 players? Are they going to have the full squad? It's going to be difficult right now, but I think I'm pretty sure they start off at the T20.
Dean, any early questions?
No, I mean, I think all week I've just been thinking about what are some things that we can actually come up with it's going to be difficult. We know it's going to be difficult, but is there any, to the coaches, is there any theory stuff that we can actually do with the players? Can you think of any theory stuff that we can do to?
It's funny you say that, Dean, because this is probably the perfect time to do your theory stuff, because taking into consideration the times we are in, the only format we're going to probably play mostly is T20 and 50 overs. So this will be the times where coaches can sit down and come up with the T20 plans. Probably if they and you can even Zoom right now. So if you want to have a Zoom meeting with your players about your T20, how you want to approach your game, things that you want to be doing, you can do some of these things like that. You know what I mean? Just to get their minds thinking cricket, so that when the doors start, they're not starting from scratch. You know what I mean?
Well, let me ask you two questions, two coaches, and either one of you could take it. When you want to set out a plan, is your plan based around the players that you have, or you just want to generalize a plan and then put people in places you think that they can actually work it out? Because some guys might have aggressive openers, but then that's all you have. So how do you how would you devise a plan?
Well, for me, I pretty much generalize it, and you have to take into consideration the type of players that you have within your squad as well. You know, for instance, like when I was with the national squad, obviously we had a guy like Kamal Labrock, we had him as opener. So okay, first 6 overs power play, you want to get off to an early start. We sacrifice 1 wicket in their power play. Then in the middle overs, we want to be scoring like a runner ball, and then have wickets in hand for the end. So we would come up with a team strategy, but obviously you have to have the right type of players that can do the things that you set out, you know, and your training sessions should be built around how you want to play the game as well.
What about you, Jeff? How does that work for you?
Well, absolutely. I'm more around that philosophy where you have to put your plan around the type of players that you have. You know, me being a coach in Somerset, especially with the club team and the young players I had, I would say pre Chris Douglas and pre Kamal Lavrock, I had a certain plan, and sometimes it was difficult for those plans to come through fruition because of the inexperience and the youthfulness of my team. But then you get a Kamal Lavrock join your team and a Chris Douglas, your plan actually is completely different. I mean, Kamal will go out there and open up the batting, and then most of the season, most guys didn't get a chance to bat. He scored 100, got close to a second 100. But yeah, it's absolutely based around the type of players that you have at your disposal.
Dean and Doc, we talked about this last week, where the fact that you guys really never got a chance to play this format. But if you were in the position of coaching, how would you kind of strategize having your plan for a T20?
I'll let Doc go first.
I think basically what Clay said, you remember T20, the first 5 overs is important. So you need to get your most explosive players up facing the most of the overs. So a guy like Kamal Lavrock has got to open. Chris Douglas, they like to hit the ball and go over the top. That's when he feels in. So you got to come up with a good strategy for your openers, and then also in the middle order, just in case they get out early, you can always change batters, right? But not playing it T20 is kind of hard coaching it. I didn't think Jeff and Clay has played in T20 too. So, but watching it and then just watching how the other coaches come up with strategies is very interesting. If you're betting first, then you always got a goal what to score, depending on the size of the field, the bowlers and stuff. So you can always change your betting order around. But if you're fielding first, and then you're chasing a beat total, then you got guys like Kamal. You try to get most of your good batters up front to get your good start. But T20 is exciting, man. I'm kind of not happy that I didn't play any T20, but I enjoy watching it.
Dean?
You couldn't pay me to be a coach of a T20. You couldn't even pay me. I just actually, to me, it's stressful. It's a very stressful. It must be stressful for the coaches, because with the T20, I mean, everything changes so fast, and coming from a 50 over and a 1 day game, whereas my mind thinks like, okay, it's going to go like this, it's going to go like this. But you're talking about in a matter of 3 balls, the whole game can change itself. Then you got to have strategy A, B, C, D, and I've seen both of these coaches, their minds are constantly going, so for me, you couldn't pay me to take it on. And then you have to change the player's mindset. You got to have aggressive running between the wicket. You got to teach players to think a certain way. So I wouldn't know I wouldn't know where to start. I really, really wouldn't. I wouldn't know where to start. It's too much for me.
I can tell you, Dean, the stress depends on the type of players you have at your disposal. Because I can tell you, I wasn't stressed at all last season. I mean, even when it came to the beginning of the season, the training sessions, I would say, you know what, Kamal, you take the session. Because he's been over in England. He's had a lot of experience playing T20. What am I going to show Kamal about T20 cricket? You know, my main role was to help the other guys make that transition. But Kamal was the guy that, you know, put different scenarios together and so forth. And so by the time the middle of the season came around, we picked up some momentum and the guys started catching on. So, but see, like I said, a lot of times coaching is about man management, not necessarily coaching.
Clay, let me ask you, the shorter version of the game, winning the toss or taking the toss. What are you setting up for your captain on the day? Is it weather related? Is it pitch or wicket? What is it?
Well, most times again, depends on where you're playing. If you're playing in Bermuda, it's difficult because the wickets are very unpredictable, you know. But if you're playing on, let's say, a good sunny day as average on a good track, 9 times out of 10, you want to put runs on the board, you know, because a lot of times teams panic when they see runs on the board. I'm a believer of putting your runs on the board first and batting from front and getting scoreboard pressure. Because once you got a decent total, you got 1 or 2 early wickets, teams tend to crack under pressure. So, you know, it's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration, you know, when you're playing locally. I'll be honest with you, Earl. Dean will probably tell you, I absolutely hate T20 cricket. I don't even watch it, to be quite honest. It's exciting, yes. I watch it for about 2 overs and 3 overs, and I've never watched a full game of T20 cricket. It just doesn't. It does nothing for me. That's not my style of cricket. But obviously, it's played, and you have to coach it. It's a lot more. I think for the bowlers, coaching the bowlers more than anything is the most difficult thing, because I could bowl on a 50-over game, it'll be a perfect ball, but a T20 ball is going for 6. You know what I mean? So it's about having game plans as to how to bowl and what areas to bowl, you know, and that you try and restrict batsmen. That's probably the biggest thing.
Jeff, hearing Clay, what would be your challenge?
The challenge as far as the shorter version of the game?
The bowling side, because obviously a bowler gets hit for 6 and his head's going. How are you managing to keep that bowler?
All right, I tell you what, I'm one of those guys that used to like to see bowlers' heads drop. You know, and unlike Clay, I watch T20 cricket because that was the type of batsman I was. I'm a little saddened that I didn't get the opportunity to play that version of the game. I think I would have had a lot of fun. But what T20 has done is offered some guys who don't have the mental capacity to play the longer version of the game to earn a living in a sport that they really enjoy. And it's drawn in a different type of spectator as well. Somebody who doesn't want to watch a 4-day match or a 5-day test match is going to watch 2, 3, 4 hours of cricket and then go home, and you know, it's enjoyable. But you know, I wouldn't want to be a bowler in T20 because very seldom do you find a wicket that's not good. I mean, sometimes you may get something that's 2 bunts or a wicket that may stop a little, but most of the times they're betting on good tracks. And I mean, these guys are fabricating and creating shots that is unbelievable. I mean, they're scooping you behind the wicketkeeper's head, they're ramping you over third man. I mean, how do you set a field? And you know, so the only thing you can really do is bowl it full and wide, and then you tend to either full toss, that's a no ball, or it's wide of the line, and that's a wide. So, hey man, you just tell your bowlers to do the best you can. You build to a plan, and if the bowler builds to the plan and he gets hammered, then you say, well done, batsman. That's about it.
Well, I've got bad news for both of you because cricket is moving into the Olympics, and as we will see in the Commonwealth Games in 2022, they're playing 10-10.
That's right.
So there will be a lot of movement around. In the Commonwealth Games next year in England, the women will play, but there's been a hard press for T10 or T20 to make its Olympic debut in Los Angeles in 2028. So there'll be a lot of gearing up towards that. And of course, as we know it, every Caribbean island basically for the Olympics competes on their own.
But you know what? When saying that, the shorter the version of the game, the closer it brings teams together.
Yes,
That's what I find.
yeah. So there will be an opportunity there for a country like Bermuda to match, because you got 10 overs to bowl, 10 overs to bat. And remember, it's not the West Indies. It's going to be Jamaica. It's going to be Barbados. It's going to be, Cayman. It's going to be, so there is avenues for Bermuda to really take a push for the Olympics in 2028, starting like as soon as possible, because that's an ambition. That's a goal you can set for players, and that brings people to the game. Players to the game.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts, Doc?
Well, you better. I don't know. Tell about you. It doesn't make sense taking too many batsmen in, because everybody is only gonna be about two or three batsmen batting. You need to take a good fielding team and a good some builders, because 10 overs. Come on, man. I haven't watched too many of the 10 over games, but I'm seeing like maybe the first two batsmen bat and then nobody else bat. So that 10-10, I think you basically need to take some good fielders and maybe a couple good bowlers, because there ain't gonna be too many batsmen batting.
But actually, let's have the conversation, because the thing is, as a country, we have to, I'm a firm believer that the shorter version of the game is our window in, due to our sheer numbers. The longer the version of the game, it's more difficult for us, because when you start talking about guys playing, when you guys were leading up to the World Cup, you were playing 3 games in 3 days, take a day off, and coming back and playing 3 more games and stuff like that. Where in Bermuda, we're playing 1 game a weekend. The builder's building 10 overs a weekend, but then you get to international competition and you're going to build 50 overs in 6 days.
Right.
Nobody's going to be able to stand up for that. What's your thoughts, Jeff?
Well, like I agree with you that the shorter version of our game is our ticket in, and the planning has to be. Well, we need to be planning that now. And from what I gather, Arnold has a strategic plan that's putting together now, and I think it's taking those sort of things into consideration. But I mean, until we know what our objectives are as far as cricket in Bermuda, where we're looking to take it, then this needs to happen soon, because we need to get started now.
Mm-hmm.
We really need to get started now, because we don't have that pool of players where that we need to identify and start moving those people along as soon as possible.
Definitely. Dean, looking at it, what would be one of the first things you would do as an administrator if our focus is to compete at the ICC level, obviously, because that's where the funding comes, but also our ambition would be into 2028 to be in the Olympics. How would that, how would you address that around the table at the Bermuda Cricket Board?
I mean, at the end of the day, all right, time and years go by very fast. We know this. We understand it. Time doesn't wait for anyone. All right. So think about it right now. 2 years ago, before the pandemic hit, you had guys in the national team. They were a certain age. 2 years later, I mean, this happens, right? So they've gotten older. My concern at this point in time would be the younger cricketers in the schools. Just as Jeff said, identifying these younger players, because we need to now structure them to teach them all forms of the game. And I think it's very critical right now with the time that we have to show them that, okay, this is coming. This is the mindset for this. You have to have a mindset for each format of the game. And that's what needs to be taught, because just as, the panel has mentioned that now you have this 2020 cricket, and I'm not really a big fan of it. I enjoy it, but we're missing out on something, and that's the critical basics and the technique. And those are the things that are missing. Think back in the day, right? You had, these guys were before their time, the 2020 players. You had guys like Glad Menendez, Jeff Richardson, Jeff Pitcher, Ricky Hill. No, if you had a 2020 team, you'd pick 4 of them, and then the rest of them could be fielders, right? So we were just talking about it, right? So that's all you need for the 10-10 game. Duck might agree with me, you know what I mean? Because those guys were batsmen that were, I say, they were before their time. And they'll take you outside the first ball of the game. But not everyone can do that. And so, but they can play all formats of the game. So my point is, we've got to educate. We've got to educate, and we have to look at the longer version of the game. We have to look at everything. We really, really do. Because you don't want to go down this road, and then of course you're playing cup match, and then all of a sudden, you're seeing people not building innings, building an innings, and you're playing shots that are uncharacteristic, and but this is what we play. Because remember, we have mindsets of our kids today, but you tell me play like this. Oh, so I think it's the education piece is extremely important.
Yeah. Doc, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want Clay to answer it after you. I understand what Dean's saying, and I agree, but do we have the numbers to have guys? Because you look around the world right now, and all these teams, and especially the top 10 teams, I don't know too much about after that, but they have different teams for different classes of cricket. So they have a test team. You might get one guy that switches to the other team, but then they have a one-day team, a T20 team. But that's sheer based on numbers. Do we have the numbers to do that?
That's a good question. I tell you what, we probably do, but are they going to perform at that level? You know what I mean? You could take a guy that plays 50 overs to play T20, but can you take a guy to play T20 to play the longer version of the game, like a 2-day game? Like that's, it's difficult to say. But I'm sure some of the players, most of the players are young players now, they're all looking at the T20 game. So, I'm coaching the under 19 team, and I'm seeing these guys trying shots now at the age of 15 or 16, this rammed shot, trying all different types of shots, and apparently they said they've been taught that, a lot of the guys in the UK have been doing it. So they're doing it now. So can they take that into the 50 over games? And are they going to take that in a 2-day game, like cup match? It's, I'm sure some of the players out, the younger players, will probably can adapt, but I don't know. It's a difficult question, and you can't tell these young guys not to do it because they've been taught. It's no more, betting pairs together. All these shots are taught at them now. They watch it on TV, so you can't tell them to try it. I'm sure you're watching if it's cup match this year or whenever the next cup. You think these guys are not gonna try playing the ram shot and all these other shots at cup match?
Oh, yeah.
No, if it comes off, everybody's gonna be clapping. If they get out, what you think you're gonna hurt? It's just the way our cricket's going. I mean, in my day, I don't know if I would try that at a cup match. If I do, I might walk the other way. But nowadays, these guys are gonna try it. But I think that a lot of these guys have been taught that now, and I think most of the players will be adapted to play the whole 3 versions of the game.
Clay, what about the number factor?
I think slightly different from these guys. I go back to what you talked about earlier. I think Bermuda really need to stick to a T10, T20 team. They should have the earned sections because, for instance, I'll use a player like Tan Frey. I'm not going to expect Tan Frey to play in a T20, a T10 game or a T20, to be quite honest. I mean, he could probably get away with a T20, but that's even pushing it, you know what I mean? But you're taking him out of his comfort zone. You're taking him, especially the younger kids. These younger kids, they're a lot braver. They want to do all that type of stuff. That's fine, but I think we need to hone in on, okay, so let's say we have a certain 15 players that are specifically T20, 15, T10 orientated, and we focus on getting the best out of those guys in that specific, you know what I mean? But the problem I have with the shorter game, especially for the younger cricketers, is that these guys is the education of it. Players, I think a lot of them like to play the shots and they have the capabilities to play the shot, but it's when to play the shot. That's the difference. You know, you got a kid. I remember watching a kid last year come in, or year before, down St. George's in a cup match trial. You got a final cup match trial, and you're not even scored 10 runs, and you're trying to ramp a shot or whatever the ball, you know. And so it's all about understanding when is, even for the longer version of the game, when to play, when not to play. Because Curly, you look at Curly, for instance. Curly plays 20, 50 overs and 4 days. But you don't see him in 50 overs that much doing all the ramp shots or the reverse sweeps and all that. You know, he gets himself in. He's making sure he's in before he does anything rash, you know what I mean? So it's basically getting the players to understand when is the right time to do these things. Now, obviously, if it's T10, you could do it from ball one, you know what I mean? But hence the reason why I said you need a team specifically just for that style of game, because that's going to be your players like your Alan Douglas, your Kamal Lavrocks, guys who can score from ball one, you know what I mean? So it's, yeah, I don't know. I think you should have a coach for each element, each section of the game, pretty much.
Jeff, you spent time with Kamal and guys like Chris, and they talk the game a lot. But how were they with the younger guys, especially saying, okay, so we saw Kamal be explosive right from ball one, but there were a few games where his timing was off, so he had to change up just a little bit to get himself in. Talking to young guys about how many balls we should be trying to make sure we get ourselves settled in and so forth. What was that talk like?
I'll tell you what, when Kamal opened up his mouth, I mean, you know, there was silence because, I mean, after his first training sessions, guys were like, wow. I mean, because, I mean, from ball one, this guy would just take off. And he wasn't just clearing the boundary. He was, I was like, dude, I only have so many balls. You know, I can't be looking to purchase more balls because you hit all the balls to be in training. But, you know, right. he broke the game down to the youngsters about there are 36 incidents in a match, and this is what you should look for, and this is the time you should be doing it. And one of the things is if a guy is firing on all cylinders, there's no need for the guy on the other end to be doing the same thing, because what's going to happen is you're going to start losing wickets at both ends. So, and to Clay's point about Terran Frey, I mean, because of the fact that because of our pool was so small, because of his technique and how solid he is, I think it's the coach's objective is to get him to rotate the strike so that the guys who hit the ball long, the big hitters, are on strike often. And we've got one end solid where we're not losing wickets at both ends. Brother is capable of doing that now because I know he's into his 30s now, and you're going to ask him to change the way he actually plays the game. But it's going to be difficult as far as the numbers concerned. I want to bring something to you guys' attention is that last year we played T20. All right, so how many 50-over type players did not play cricket at all last year? There were a number of guys who chose not to play T20 cricket.
Yeah, quite a bit, yeah.
So quite a bit of guys didn't play at all. But these are the guys we're going to be looking for come up for this upcoming 50-over tournament. Chances are we won't be playing 50 overs this year, depending on the protocols that's going to be put in place. So technically, we're between a rock and a hard place right now because, like I said, a lot of our top cricketers didn't play last year because of the format.
Wow.
But doesn't this present a challenge to play amongst, I guess, select teams 50 overs on Saturdays as opposed to playing the 2020? Just to give them that format, would something like that be open, especially to the players that really need to spend time at the crease?
Well, we need to get creative. We need to get creative. We need to find a way for these guys to be facing balls out in the middle, running between the wicket, game type scenarios. And that's probably one of the options that are in place. Inter-score type matches, drafting a training squad of, say, 35, 40 players and having those type of matches going on. But who knows? I mean, it's a difficult situation that we're in at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Doc, when you were coming out of your playing career and getting into the coaching, what were some of the things you took from your style to try and help people? Because at the time when you were doing it, the 2020 was just starting, but it was more, you wanted, you're a guy that likes to build an innings. You got a guy next to you, Jeff, that his building innings was knocking down the buildings outside the ground. So, what was some of that you took to those guys that try to help them build that inning to be there and spend time at the crease?
Right now, Earl, everything else is hand-eye coordination. I mean, like, see how Jeff used to be a big hitter, right? It's all good to be a big hitter, but if you're not I see a lot of this coming in now to play now, there's a lot of risks. I don't know if you watch Delray when he bats now. Not even Delray. A lot of these guys is risks, So, but that all comes from a stable base, and they got to keep your hand and eye on the ball. So that's my concern now. Before we used to coach guys used to be betting pair together, but all that's thrown out the door. You know what I mean? So coaching now is going at another level. These guys, as long as they got a stable base, and the hand and eye coordination, wrists and all that, they can play any shot they want. I mean, they didn't even have to keep hitting sixes all the time. But I see it like a guy like Cody. You see Cody, he hit much sixes, but he scores 30, 40 runs. Man, look, it's not even got 1-6 till his eye's in. Just like Clay said, a lot of these guys play their shots when the eye is in. So the basic thing is like, you got to make sure all the batsmen now coaching the players now, T20 or 50 over competition should be stable, hand and eye coordination, and basically, like I said, another thing is running between the wickets too. A guy like Kamal Levra, there's good time over the ball. Jeez, I mean, what you gonna teach Kamal? Like Jeff said, he's gonna teach me something. But like I said, it's all about knowing your players, and they once you see you can always tell your best 3 or 4 batsmen, how they play their shots, and you can see if a T20, 50 overs. So basically, it's just looking at the batsmen, and then you could coach them that way. But right now, like I said, I just like to watch the batsman after a few training sessions, and then right away you could tell they could bat number 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, Dean, the games nowadays change gears with the batsmen. Not so much with the bowler, but with the batsmen. You were one of those guys that would come in, and if you needed to hold an end, you would hold the end. If you needed quick runs, you would take that challenge on. But as a batsman, knowing when to make that change of gear, when do you decide that? From the pavilion, looking at the scoreboard, once you get on the crease, when do you make that decision?
Well, like you said, I mean, it just depends on the game situation. The game would dictate it. You're going out and well, the first thing with me when I'm approaching the wicket, of course you want to rotate strike. Gary Stir, he was coaching at Birmingham, right, at Warwickshire, and I never forget. I played against him in 1987, and one of the things that I sat down across the table and I asked him in a youth tournament, I said, "Listen, man, how do you guys approach the game?" And he said, "You know what? The first 20 runs, all I'm doing is looking for singles. That's all I'm doing. I'm not even looking to hit a boundary. I'm looking to rotate strike as quickly as possible." And you're talking about a good 20 years ago. He says, "I'm looking to rotate strike as quickly as possible and get moving about the crease. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and get going, and get moving." So I think looking how I was able to change gears, and I think I spoke about it last week. If I've got a left hand or right hand, it was pretty easy. But as soon as you're getting to the crease and you're moving around a bit and the field's moving around a bit, things became easy. And you can change gears once you're moving around a bit. But the minute that you're stuck in the crease and you're trying to hit a boundary, or you're trying your best and you can't get anything, pressure starts to build. So I wanted to revert the pressure onto the fielding team to take that pressure away from myself. So that's how I was able to go ahead and change gears, because I never wanted to receive the pressure. And just on a funny joke, I never forget at the World Cup, I went up to Dhoni and I asked Dhoni, I said, "Hey, Dhoni, listen, got a quick question." When we played India, I said, "I got a quick question. You hit the ball hard. Like Dhoni was at his peak, right?" So I said, "What do you do?" And I'm looking for this guy with the best advice ever. He said, "Just see it, hit it as hard as you can." And I just stood there, I'm looking for more information. He said, "Yeah, I just tell you. See it and hit it as hard and as far as you can." That was it. And he walked off.
That's up Jeff Sally.
Yeah, you're thinking that it's this magical thing, but again, like you said, it's just having confidence and putting the pressure back onto the fielding team and back onto the bowling team. That's it. Revert the pressure.
Yeah. Jeff, where did you get that aggression from? Because guys would say from bowl one, if it's there to hit, I'm hitting it. Where other guys would say, "You know what? Let me get myself settled in." And your settled in was get another bowl because this one's going.
Well, as Doc can attest to, we grew up out in St. John's Field on a concrete wicket with the coconut matting, and the ball bounced. And I had good eyes. And the nice thing about a concrete wicket, every time the ball bounces in that spot, it's going to do the same thing. So, and I was taught from young to watch the ball out of the bowler's hand. If he releases it early, it's going to be full. If he holds on too long, it's going to be short. So I knew whether it was going to be short or whether it was going to be full from the time it left the bowler's hand. And back then, you went to school runs because of the way the balls bounce. You had to be able to hook, pull, and cut. And then anything full went straight back over the bowler's head. That was it. I mean, you learned how to. I mean, Doc Mendes was the best cutter of a ball you would ever see. We learned that playing on a concrete wicket. And then after the matting went, we was one of the first clubs to have the AstroTurf. All that did was stop us from having to carry the mat out to the wicket on with stumps. Because remember, you had to reel the wicket up and then put some stumps underneath, and then 4 guys would carry the matting off the wicket. But it was definitely growing up at St. John's Field at 12, 13 years old on a concrete wicket. And back then, guys would build at you. They didn't care whether you had a helmet on or anything. If they thought you could bet, they're bunting you. Oh yeah, that and it just never left me because I just enjoy watching the ball sailing over the fence.
That's because you didn't have to go get it.
For sure, absolutely. And what Doc was saying about the base, back when I was playing cricket, they taught you about a trigger move, and then I adopted it back on the cross. Take 2 leg back on the cross just as the bowler's getting ready to deliver. I mean, no, these guys are getting what they do in a forward press. I mean, they're actually putting the chin down the wicket, and hitting balls from in front of them. And I'm saying, back then we used to rock back and try to hit. These guys are hitting the ball. I mean, putting the chin out there, hitting everything in front of them. So the game has definitely changed tremendously, And technology plays an important role in the way I coach as well, because these guys are constantly on their phones, or they got the laptop, or they got a Mac. So if there's a particular shot I want to work on or whatever, or technique, let's pick up my phone and share it to them. They'll get it one time. I mean, it's amazing that these guys actually react to technology. You could talk to them all you want. The minute you share it to them, like for instance, with my son, he was falling over a little bit because his head was going here and started staying straight. And every time I say something to him, he would be like, "No, but Dad, I did." I said, "Okay, you know what? I recorded him without him knowing." Then you share it to him. And then another example of some coaching. Bermudian cricketers tend to practice what they're very good at. Guys be having throwdowns. Guys will go to cover drive and they'll be banging the ball up against the wall, cover drive, and says, "Well, can you on drive?" That's not my favorite shot. Says, "Why are you practicing your favorite shot? You should be practicing the shot that you're not good at to bring you so that, to give you a bit more variety when you approach the match." So that's another thing I emphasize. Work on your weaknesses. That's what training is about, is to work on your weaknesses. Yeah.
Yeah. Clay, what about the commitment side? Because in order to build a team, you have to have everybody committed to the goal. And obviously, any team you get in, if the goal is to win the league, then everybody's got to be. It's got to all be buy-in. It's got to be everybody 100% all the time. The commitment level for our players at the club level, what do you think needs to happen? I mean, Jeff just gave a good scenario where you get technical with them using electronics, but that commitment side, where do you think we should go with that, and how should we go in making sure that we get these guys committed?
Well, it obviously comes down to each team. Each team has their own little way of doing things. For me as a coach, one thing that I try to do when I first go to a team is I try to highlight certain aspects of the game, like, for instance, commitment that I know that they need to do more of. So I would actually players, what are the 3 things that we as a club need to do that would improve us as a team altogether? And 9 times out of 10, commitment to training and games and all that, time management. Those are the 2 most important things in Bermuda cricket. So you have to get buy-in from the players, so you sell it to them, say, okay, these are the things that we're going to commit to, that we as a team are collectively going to say that we need to improve upon. I'm going to hold you accountable for these. And that's what you do. You have to hold your players accountable. Players know what they need to improve on to make themselves better. So you tell them, if we can do this and this, A and B, that's going to give us 10% chance of winning games more often. So at the beginning of the season, I expect you to be training. If we're starting at 5:30 to meet there at 5:30, if the game starts at 12 o'clock and we say we're going to be there at 11 o'clock, I expect you to be there on time so that you're getting a proper warm up and things like that. So once you get buy-in from the players, that's 9 times out of 10 you're gonna see the commitment or whatever. But that is probably the biggest challenge. And I'll be honest with you, Earl, that's one of my biggest fears of coaching in Bermuda, is the fact that of the lack of commitment from players, because I just don't know if they love the game enough anymore. A lot of players like the game and they play because they like the game, but they don't love it. And I shouldn't say not all of them. Don't get me wrong, not all of them, because there are some players out there that absolutely love the game and they're totally committed. But then there's a bunch that just they couldn't care less. You know what I mean? And that's why I think we're where we are now, because players just like the game. So going that extra mile and making that commitment, that's going to make you that much better as a player. They could care less if they score 50 or whatever, or get 10 runs on the weekend. They just have some players just happy to be playing. It's a day out for them. You know what I mean? And for me, that was never good enough. We grew up in St. George's where training was like a game, so you had to show up in training just to get into the squad for the weekend. You used to challenge each other in training. So yeah, it's all comes down to the players and the individual coaches as to how you can get the best out of your players. And I find that one thing players do like or look for in coaches is that and coaches need to always look to come up with different things, different ways of motivating their players. If a player goes to the training session and he sees the same drills over and over and over and over, he's going to get bored. So you have to find different drills. You have to find different ideas and come up with different things that are going to motivate your players to want to come train. Like, oh shucks, what are you going to do this session? I remember we did that last session. So you have to find different ideas to keep them motivated.
Doc, like Jeff, when you were coaching domestically, one of the teams I remember when you coached PHC, you had a group of senior players and then you had a group of really, really young players. Jeff, prior to getting Kamal and Chris, had a bunch of young players all the time. But when you have that kind of senior player, youth player, how do you kind of marry that two together to get the best footy team out of everyone?
Well, basically, when you got that, that's good because you could get one of these senior players kind of mentor the younger ones, the junior one, right? And when I was at PAT, we had a few, senior players. And a lot of the senior players were ex-cup match players or played at a high level. So, we had a few youngsters that was in the team. So what we used to do, we used to kind of make sure one of those guys mentor even in the training. I always had Jason Anderson. We had a wicket keeper up there, Jelani. He's going Jelani, old boy, but he went to Rancher's office. He used to coach him doing the wicket keeping. And then Chick Evans was up there for a while, and he was with a couple of the spinners. So every training session, we had one of those guys mentoring some of the younger guys, and even during the game too. So it made my job a lot easier. And it's good to have these senior players there to help out because as a coach, it's a lot of other things you have to do. So if you got someone senior there that can help out, it makes your job a lot easier. So and that kind of worked out for us because when we was at PAT, we got promotion. We won the Western contest, right? And we also won the knockout tournament. We used to have a knockout tournament for the second division. So we kind of won, we won a better trophies. But like I said, it's a thing where it's always good to have senior players, and like you said, it makes your job a lot easier.
Yeah. Dean, remember last week we were talking about some of the bowlers that can actually compete in today's game, such as the T20. Let's ask Clay and Jeff, who are some of those players who wouldn't last in that or would get really hammered in that or be on top of the game. So Clay, let's start with you. Who would a bowler be that when you were playing that would kind of not be able, as good as they were, not be able to handle the T20 format?
Ooh, you mean single out players now? That's tough.
Yeah, I mean, as good as they were, they would find it challenging.
I think some of the players for instance, one player that I particularly played with brought an immaculate line and length, but because he didn't spin the ball that much, I think he would probably run into some problems. That would be Calabash. Calabash, perfect 50 over bowler, bowled not only money, but for the T20 game, he didn't have the variety to cause the players trouble. So he would probably struggle a little bit with the way that the game is moved now. But great player, great bowler. He's probably other than that, all the players that I bowl with, I think they would still do well. Chick would do well simply because it's competitive. Maxwell, but all the bowlers, Terry Burgess was another good bowler. I think mostly bowlers back in the day would hold their earn in T20 nowadays, right now. I don't think there's a lot of really, and I shouldn't probably say this, but I don't think there's a lot of really top-notch quality batsmen like you had back in the day that could destroy. But like you look at guys like Glenn Blakely back in the day, Lionel Cameron that was coming to, you had your Narrows, you had your Jeffs, you had your Jeff Pitchers. These guys could, from ball one, take you outside and get on top of you. You know what I mean? We don't have that. I don't see that type of quality of players nowadays. You may have one or two, but there's not a lot of them.
Jeff, who would struggle? Who would that bowler be that would struggle?
It hurts me to say this, but I think my good friend of mine, Gary Brayman, would struggle. Simply the fact that he didn't have much pace, and he was spot on. This guy would bowl a line in length. He had a little off color, but T20 and being what it is today, because he didn't have that variety and that pace, he would struggle. He would definitely struggle. Unfortunately, he would struggle. His brother was a bit nippier than he was, but Gary would have a rough time.
Okay. Well, who do you think would be the most explosive bowler because they had so many different things in their arsenal?
Ah, it's funny you should say that, but when my brother played, because he turned the ball so big and he had variety. I mean, he wasn't he didn't spin the ball slow. He pushed it through a bit and still got big turns. It was kind of difficult to bet against him, if you know what I mean. But like Clay said, Chick was another guy. He would toss that ball up in the air, and if you didn't get to the pitch, man, you'd be stranded on the pitch. Trust me. But there wasn't that many guys who had that variety. I think we see a lot of variety nowadays because it's you have to. In order for you to survive in T20 cricket today, you have to put the work in the nets, and you have to develop your art, your craft. You just can't show up on a weekend or a night and run in and build to these guys nowadays. So guys spend hours and hours and hours working on the craft, on the line, the length, and getting a bit more revolutions on the ball so that when it hits the wicket, it could turn. So yeah, a lot of our bowlers struggle. Trust me.
Who would be that one for you, Clay? That most explosive bowler that because of the variance?
Well, again, I would have to single out Chick Adams simply because Chick is so competitive that if you start hitting Chick finds ways and to utilize the whiff of the crease. He started to go behind, hold his hand behind his back and build the ball so that you don't see which way is turning it. He would always come up with different ways to try and outdo the batsman in a sense, you know what I mean? But like Jeff said, back then we didn't have many bowlers that bowled a lot of different balls, like the slow ball and all that. I can't remember. You look at Adrian King. Adrian King ain't bowling a slow ball. Adrian King or Pacer, those guys can let that ball go flying across your head first before they build a slow ball. You know what I mean? That's real. Yeah, I mean seriously. They utilize the pace. So the game has evolved so much since which that all this has come into play now. You know what I mean? But back then, yeah, that just wasn't the case.
Dean, we heard those same names last week, didn't we?
Tell you. Hey, I tell you what, and don't forget Sluggy. Left arm, don't forget Sluggy.
Yeah.
Sluggy was another one that will, you know what I mean, do a left arm, do a little bit.
Yes, so, he utilized he utilized the crease. He comes around, comes
exactly.
through the wicket. You change his pace. These guys, intelligent bowlers, bowlers that, and what I think what's good about it is that they're competitive and they don't like to get hit. You know, that's why made them do it, because they don't like to get hit, so they're going to find ways to manipulate the batsman.
And they don't get flustered at all. They don't get flustered. You hit them, they accept that as a challenge.
Exactly.
Okay, that's what you want to do? Okay, try hit this one.
Yeah.
You know, they pick it up as a challenge.
I had a question for both coaches actually. Earl, can I ask it?
Yeah.
All right, guys, you've coached various teams, right? And one of the things that I always wanted to ask, you guys, is realistic goals for your team. How do you actually go about setting realistic goals for your team at the beginning of the season? Now, and like you said, getting them to buy in, because a lot of the times the club has goals, the fans have expectations. How do you set realistic goals? It's something that I've always wanted to ask.
Well, the word you use, realistic.
You go first.
Yeah, the word you use is realistic. So at the beginning of the season, the conversation I have with my guys is your first goal and objective is to improve over what you did last season. Because if you're not here to improve what you did last season, you're wasting your time, you're wasting my time. You're just here for an outing. You're not here to play the game at to the best of your ability, right? And I've always say play within your limitations. For instance, I had a guy who continued to get out hooking. Coach, what do I do? I will stop hooking. Well, and then I said, okay, bye. He says, well, I can't help it. I said, well, let me see your bet. He was carrying a bet almost in excess of 3 pounds. The guy weighed about 90 pounds soaking wet. I'm like, well, first of all, you need a lighter bet. Why are you using a heavy bet? Well, Chanderpool has a heavy bet. Instead of me screaming at him, I used it as a teaching moment. I said, look, if you watch Chanderpool bet, watch him bet. as he bats early, everything's in the V early in his innings. He's in the ball straight back past the bowler, straight back down the ground. He don't. You could use a heavy bat if that's the way you bat. And then later on in his innings, you see him working that ball back with a point, forward a point, hook, a low cow corner mid wicket. Later in the innings, when the ball's not coming off as quick, the ball's probably lost a bit of a shine. So I said, if you want to copy somebody, not only use a heavy bat, use the same method he uses in early units, just hit the ball back down the crease, back down the wicket. And there's also, and I've also felt that some coaches tend to overcoach in that you try to force techniques on guys that really don't have the ability. So we as coach have to coach within the player's limitation as well. Don't ask a player to develop or try to develop a certain skill when they don't have the ability to do so. And that's being honest from the start. And also advise them on what the rule is in the team. This is your rule. I don't expect my skipper, if say Kamal got out early, to go up there and do what Kamal did. This is your rule in the team. This is what's required of you. And if you can't do that, then you don't need to be in the team. So it's about being realistic up front and putting, and like you said, putting achievable and honest goals in front of them.
Great.
Yeah, I think Jeff said it best. From my perspective, it's pretty much the same. It all boils down to the team as well, because, i.e., who you're coaching. If you're coaching one of the lower clubs in the league, then you have to make sure that, okay, last year, say you won 5 games or 5 games all year, you may want to say, well, let's have a goal of trying to reach 8 wins this year. You know what I mean? Just making small, achievable goals, but and getting everybody, again, for me, it's all about buy-in, getting players to understand what is going to be needed for us to be successful, and getting them. I tend to do it a little bit different. I tend to do one-on-one individual goals with players. So how many runs did you score last year? You scored 150. Somebody will say, I want to score 500 runs. I said, well, that's not realistic. Let's minimize this and say 150. Let's go to 250. Not actual 100 runs. You know what I mean? So you make them small, achievable goals that they can set up with. But at the same time, I think it's important, like halfway through the season, that you do a check. You do a check. Let's say where are we compared to in terms of achieving your goals? Some may be where they want to be, some may be higher, some may be less. So what can we do? What do we have to do differently to make you that much better, to step up their game or whatever? I mean, I had some players. It could be simple as getting to the game early and warming up. Some guy will come to the game at 11:30 for a 12 o'clock game and go out there and score a duck. Okay, well, try coming to the game early, and next thing is come to the game early and then scoring runs. So little things, you just have to play mind games with a lot of these players, because that's just what it is, But yeah, it's hard, Dean. It's really hard. It's really hard. But you just have to continuously coach, pretty much. Continuously coach.
Wow.
Well, gentlemen, I do want to thank you very much for your time this evening. Hopefully we can invite you guys back once we know what the season will turn out to look like. We know that the Premier is scheduled to speak. He should have started about 3 minutes ago. And hopefully he gives us an update as to when we will come out of what we're currently in and possibly get back to some sporting things that can actually help us to prepare for international commitment. Because as we look down the road, that's this year's goal, the international commitments, as we're required to do by the ICC. So, hopefully we can come out of this and get back into some playing of one of our national sports as soon as possible. Okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. Now, Doc and Dean, we'll see you again next week, Sunday night. Enjoy your evening, gentlemen.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yes,
Enjoyed
mate.
it.
Yeah.